For me, he plays. He's the X factor. I think he's the missing piece for Arsenal winning the Premier League, in my opinion.
The missing piece, as in, by signing him, they do win the Premier League?
The pressure's on now not to win it if they don't win it. You know, he's gone out. I think he's bought amazingly. They needed a holding midfield player. They bought a top draw one. They needed a centre forward. They bought a centre forward. Now they bought someone who can break defences. You know, he could get in a lot of teams. I watched Arsenal a lot. When the pressure's on, they find it hard to break teams down. They rely on Odegaard. If Odegaard doesn't do it, and he didn't do it last season, they struggled. Saka got injured. You know, he's the other one they rely on. All of a sudden, you got him. He is different class. He's different class.
So is he actually a more significant signing than striker, Gyökeres?
In my opinion, I think so. I think, you know, because Havertz can play up front. If you know, when you've got Eze in the team, no, he can't. He's injured. But with Eze in the team, he makes things happen. He's the X factor. He ain't going to run around. The fans need to understand that. He's a bit like an Ozil sort of player. You know, they glide around. They're very talented. They're not going to track back 60 yards. You know, forget about that. Give him the ball. He will make things happen, and he will break defences down. You know, I was shocked that Chelsea didn't go for him. You know, they rely on Cole Palmer too much, in my opinion. You need more than one X factor. And if you can get more than one match winner on the pitch, you know, you've got every chance of winning football matches. And I think he's an amazing signing for Arsenal. He's one of the players that I would pay to watch play football.
Our chief correspondent, Carve Solokol, is with us, as well as Dave and Merson and myself. Carve, how is it that we've managed to mock up this image of Eze in an Arsenal shirt and not a Tottenham shirt?
I know we're talking about the fact that Arsenal have hijacked this deal, but Arsenal actually done a lot of work on this throughout the summer. He's not a player that they suddenly got interested in yesterday. They first made contact with Steve Parish at Crystal Palace earlier this summer, just to let Crystal Palace know that they were interested in signing him, and also to let Crystal Palace know that they wanted to be kept updated about any developments regarding Eze's future. Now, what really changed this week is that Spurs obviously made their move. Spurs agreed a deal with Crystal Palace. They agreed a deal with the player as well. But then Kai Havertz was injured on Sunday. So that accelerated Arsenal's decision-making processes. They decided that they couldn't risk going into this season with having the kind of injury problems that they had last season. And that's why they made their move, their late move for Eze. And because Eze's a Arsenal fan, it was a simple decision for him to make. He wanted to play for Arsenal. It's been his dream to play for Arsenal. What I think is particularly interesting with the news that we've just brought you in the last few minutes, the fact that Eze is not going to play tonight, because we were led to believe that the reason he wasn't going to go to Spurs is that Spurs had agreed a deal yesterday with the club and with the player, but Crystal Palace had said, hang on a minute, we don't want to complete this deal just yet because we want him to play on Thursday night. Once that game is out of the way, then he can go to Spurs. But now it seems to be different rules for Arsenal than the rules for Spurs, because he's not going to play, because he obviously doesn't want to jeopardise his move to Arsenal. But it seemed that he was going to play if he'd been on his way to Spurs.
Interesting. And Merce, just in terms of, you know, you talked about how big a signing you think this is for your old club. What will the reaction be like inside that Arsenal dressing room? Is it thumbs up all round at the arrival of a quality player, or is there now a bit of insecurity there from players looking over their shoulder? Oh,
No, they need to win the Premier League, these players. You know, the more top draw players they get in at the top end of the field, the better it'll be. 100%. He will lift it. You know, when you're playing for your Arsenals, your Chelseas, not so much Man United at the moment, but, you know, over the years it has been. You know, your Liverpools, your Man Cities, they kick off and 10 people go and sit behind the ball. 9 times out of 10 in the Premier League, you have to break them down. He breaks people. He glides past people. He doesn't even touch the ground sometimes. He just glides and he goes past people. He wins free kicks. He makes things happen. And this is no disrespect to Palace, where he was outstanding. He's playing with another even top quality player now. You know, gone up another level. Yeah, and I'm so excited. I don't really get excited for signings too often. I'm very excited for this, because I thought Liverpool, if they go and get Isak, you're thinking, it could be another year or second. They are right in it for me now, Arsenal.
Can I just ask you a question? Might seem to be a stupid question, but do you have any sympathy for Tottenham?
Yeah, majorly. I don't know. I'm going to sleep tonight. Honestly, I don't. I've been really. No, I've been really trying to pull myself together today. No,
They did their best.
Yeah, they did nothing wrong. You know, I'm with you. Why wasn't that deal done before Thursday? It's not. No disrespect to Palace, they should get through this tie. They don't really need him that badly. They're not playing one of the big boys in the Europa Conference. They get through this. It should have been done a lot quicker. I don't know if that's Tottenham messing about or Eze thinking, wait there a minute, can I wait a little bit longer? Because, you know, we're still early in the, you know, still nearly, 10 days to the transfer window shuts or so. You know, I think he might have. Yeah, I do feel sorry for Tottenham in a way, in that way. At least they went for the player and they tried to get him. And the worst thing is they've missed out to Arsenal. That's the worst thing about it. You know, if he'd have gone to a United or a City but to lose it to Arsenal, oh, yeah. I like the way they moved on quickly, like they couldn't mess with Arsenal. You know, that was a different matter.
I think what I'm interested in really is that Arsenal have clearly learnt a little bit from last season as well. It was the injuries that really hampered their title charge last season, and everyone knew they needed a striker. Great, they've got the striker in, but it was those other injuries, Bukayo Saka's injury, and now they've got Noni Madueke. They've got another option with Eze. Does he need, do you think, like a flying fullback to come down the left-hand side to help him out so he can come into those inside channels? No,
I think he just needs a good fullback to sit behind him. Let him get on with it. I think you need Eze one-on-one. Get everybody else away. Get everybody. You don't want fullbacks joining in with him and making it claustrophobic. You need it. Just give him the ball, back him up. A bit like Gary Neville and David Beckham back in the day. You know, David was a bit different. He needed a yard and he whipped the ball in as good as the best cross of a ball I've ever seen. This is the same. Just give him the ball and let him go 1v1. I think when you start overlapping, all of a sudden you start bringing another player into the equation and it starts tightening that space up. Give him the ball. Yeah, I couldn't. Coming off the left, people say he's got to play as a 10. I don't see that. I think Martinelli will be better away from home, you know, in certain games but when they're at home and they're dominating, they're getting 80-90% of the ball, he's got to play every home game, in my opinion, because that's where I think Arsenal need to break teams down. And the quicker they break them down, it just brings the crowd down, that nerves goes out the window, and then they can start expressing themselves. But how many times we've seen Arsenal 25, 30 minutes gone, 40, it starts getting tense, you know, and I think they've got to do what Man City used to do and blow teams away early doors.
And just a final aside, as well as you rubbing your hands at this and Arteta no doubt rubbing his hands, will Thomas Tuchel be rubbing his hands as well? The prospect of him, Saka, Rice playing every week together?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, he has to go to the World Cup. You've got to get match winners. Match winners win your tournaments. You know, a team wins your Premier Leagues, a team. But when you get to knockout tournaments for England, it's X factors that win you. You know, we've seen it with Argentina, with Maradona. We've seen it with Argentina, with Messi as well. You know, you need that X factor. You need that. And he gives you that X factor for me. But he will be coming into a team. And he's a team player. You know, he's a team player, you know, and he doesn't need too many opportunities. He doesn't need to touch the ball 60, 70 times in a football match to make things happen. You know, he's played at Palace where they play on the counter-attack and, you know, and all of a sudden they don't get the ball a lot, but he makes things happen when they get it. And that's what I like. He doesn't... Certain players have to touch it 60, 70 times to make something happen in a game. You go, oh, my God. But him... He might touch it 15, 20 times. He always makes... I couldn't talk highly enough of the lad. I think everything about him ticks the box for him being at Arsenal.
And it's a great human story for him as well, because this is someone who was released by Arsenal when he was 13. He was in tears. He was an Arsenal fan. Thierry Henry was his hero. Then I think he was released by Fulham as well. He went off. He was at Millwall. He was at Reading. He was at QPR, where he did really well. And at QPR, he did so well that he's got his move to Crystal Palace, and now, you know, 13 years later, his dream has come true. So it's almost the story of it is never give up on your dreams, you know.
That's how strong-minded the lad is as well. He's had a lot of knockbacks. You know, that tells you a lot about the lad. You know, he kept on going and going and thought, you know, I'm not going to listen to you because your opinions are I'm not very good. I'll go again and again and again, and he's done that. And utmost respect for him, absolutely. You know, that's a lot what he's gone through, and keep on getting knocked back. And he'd have been better than players that were at that club who probably stayed, and he probably thought, wait a minute, I'm better than you. you know, and fair play to him. So, yeah, and fair play to Arsenal. They could have gone, oh, that's a bit embarrassing. You know, we let him go at 13, but they didn't. They've gone, you know, bang, we'll pay the money.
I do think they've got a decent chance of winning that Conference League if they can get the squad together. I think they can. I genuinely think you look at what Glasner's done. He's won the FA Cup, he's won the Europa League with Frankfurt. But Glasner's a really interesting part of this, I think, because if you look at his history, when he was at Wolfsburg, he spoke quite openly about the fact he didn't feel enough was being done to reinforce the squad. When he was at Eintracht Frankfurt, it was exactly the same. He was quite public in trying to drive the club forward to bring players in. He's not going to be happy to lose star players and not have them replaced.
And he's got credit in the bank as well, isn't he? If Oliver Glasner, who's just won the FA Cup and been so successful, could have gone to Bayern Munich not that long ago,